Hello, Ami. This is Jin. I'm so happy to be with you today. Before we start, I want to know one thing. Where are you watching from? Leave your country or city in the comments so we can all feel closer as a family. Today, I want to share something truly special. It's a moment that touched my heart more deeply than I can describe. I attended Jungkook's wedding. Even now, when I think about it, I still feel that warmth. The kind of emotion that reminds you how far we've come, how much we've grown, and how precious it is to witness someone you love begin a new chapter in life. When I first saw Jungkook standing there, waiting for his bride, I couldn't help but smile. That same kid who once looked up to all of us, who practiced tirelessly, who laughed at the smallest things, was now standing as a man ready to start his own family. I felt this rush of pride, and at the same time, a quiet ache in my heart. It wasn't sadness, it was something deeper. A realization that time really does move fast, and that we're all walking our own paths now. The ceremony was beautiful, simple, elegant, and filled with sincerity. There were no grand distractions, no unnecessary glamour, just love, pure and honest. I remember looking around and seeing faces that once shared the same stage, the same dreams, and the same sleepless nights. It wasn't about fame that day. It was about family, about connection, about beginnings and blessings. I walked up to Jungkook after the ceremony, and for a moment we just stood there, looking at each other. No words, just silence filled with years of memories. I said, "Happy wedding, Jungkook. I'm so proud of you." He smiled, that same innocent yet mature smile, and hugged me tightly. I could feel his heartbeat. It was steady, strong, full of love and confidence. That was when I realized he's truly happy. Army, you would have cried if you were there. There was laughter, music, and so much love in the air. When the sun set, the lights danced softly across the garden where the reception took place. I could hear the quiet murmur of friends and family sharing stories about how Jungkook had grown, how he had touched their lives. It was one of those evenings where you don't want to blink because you know you're living something you'll never forget. When I gave my short speech, I said, "Sometimes love doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to be true." Everyone applauded, and Jungkook looked down, smiling shyly. That's when I realized he hadn't changed much. He's still that same humble boy who always tried his best, who never lost his sincerity even in the spotlight. After the speeches, we danced. Yes, I danced. You know, I can't miss a chance to move a little, right? There was laughter all around, and even though my steps were a bit silly, Jungkook laughed so hard that his eyes disappeared completely. For a brief moment, it felt like the old days, like we were all together again, not as artists, but as brothers. As the night went on, I looked up at the sky. The stars were bright that night, and I thought about how lucky we are to share moments like these, to have people who cheer for us, who believe in us, who love us no matter what. Army, I thought of you too, because every milestone, every celebration feels incomplete without you. I wanted to tell Jungkook how proud I am of him, not just for his music, but for the man he's become. Responsible, kind, and ready to protect someone he loves. I told him, "You've always been like a younger brother to me, and seeing you happy today is one of the greatest gifts I could receive." He looked at me, eyes a bit watery, and said, "Hyung, thank you for being here. It means everything." That sentence alone made my heart full. Army, people often think that idols live perfect lives, but the truth is we feel everything you do. Joy, nostalgia, even that bittersweet mix of happiness and longing. Seeing Jungkook start a new chapter reminded me that our story doesn't end. It simply changes shape. The love we share as a team, as brothers, and with you, it stays forever. So, if you're watching this, wherever you are, I want you to take this moment as a reminder. Celebrate love when you see it. Cherish the people who make your life meaningful. Because in the end, that's what remains, the warmth of moments that touched your heart. And tonight, As I stood there watching Jungkook and his bride share their first dance, I whispered to myself, "This is love, this is life." I'll tell you more about what happened next. The laughter, the toast, the quiet conversation that brought back memories of our early days in the next part. Stay with me, ARMY. This story is just beginning. After Jungkook's first dance with his bride, something shifted in the air. The lights dimmed slightly, and a golden glow filled the entire hall. It wasn't just a wedding reception anymore. It felt like time had paused, like we were all being reminded of how precious this life is. I stood near the edge of the dance floor, just watching him smile, and it hit me again how much he had grown. I remember the first time I met Jungkook. He was just a teenager, shy, quiet, always watching everyone else to learn. He would stay behind after practice, repeating moves over and over again until he got them perfect. There were nights when he'd sit beside me in the dorm, talking about his dreams and how much he wanted to make ARMY proud. And now here he was, a man, confident, full of purpose, ready to build his own home. That realization made my chest tighten in the most beautiful way. When the music changed to something softer, I found myself surrounded by familiar faces, our brothers. We didn't say much at first. We just smiled at one another, exchanging those silent acknowledgements that only people who've shared years of life together can understand. I saw Namjoon nod at me from across the room, his eyes filled with emotion. Hobie, always the mood maker, was holding back tears, pretending to be busy fixing his tie. Yoongi had that small, meaningful smile, the one that hides 1,000 thoughts behind it. I laughed quietly, remembering how many times we'd stood together backstage, nervous, waiting for the lights to rise before another performance. That feeling of brotherhood never fades, no matter how much time passes. And in that moment, at Jungkook's wedding, I could feel that same energy again, the bond that connects us beyond music, beyond fame, beyond the stage. The food was amazing, by the way. I know ARMY loves when I talk about food. There was kimchi jjigae, just the way Jungkook likes it, and even strawberry tarts, his favorite dessert. When I took a bite, I couldn't help but smile. I could almost hear him saying, "Hyung, try this one, it's better," like he used to during our world tours. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for, the toast. I didn't plan to speak again, but Jungkook insisted. He handed me the microphone with that same teasing smile and said, "Come on, Hyung, one more time, say something for me." I took a deep breath and looked around the room. The lights reflected softly off the crystal glasses, and everyone's faces were glowing with happiness. I said, when you see someone you love reach a moment like this, you don't need to prepare words, you just feel it. Jungkook, you've grown into someone we all admire, not because of your success, but because of your heart. You've stayed genuine, humble, and full of kindness. That's rare, and I hope you never lose it. There was a quiet pause after I finished. Then applause, gentle, sincere, full of warmth. I saw Jungkook lower his head, smiling shyly, and I knew he was trying not to cry. That moment reminded me why we're more than just members of a group, we're family. After the toast, I went outside for a bit of air. The night sky was calm, filled with stars, and I could hear laughter from inside, drifting through the open doors. I leaned on the railing and just breathed. The sound of music blended with memories of our journey, the stadiums, the fans, the endless rehearsals. It was like every version of us, from the past to now, was celebrating together under that same sky. I thought about ARMY again. I imagined you all smiling, maybe even tearing up while hearing this story. Because you've been with us from the beginning. You saw Jungkook grow. You saw all of us stumble, learn, and rise again. So, in a way, this wedding wasn't just his, it was yours too. You helped shape the man he became. You gave us all the strength to keep going. When I went back inside, Jungkook's bride came to greet me. She bowed politely and said, "Thank you for coming, Jinsi. It means so much to him." I smiled and replied, "It means so much to me too. He deserves all the happiness in the world." She looked radiant, calm, kind, and deeply in love. I could tell that she truly cared for him, and that gave me peace, knowing that someone would be by his side, not just for the good days, but for every hard one too. That's what love is all about. The night continued with laughter, more dancing, and stories that made everyone both laugh and tear up. At one point, we all sang together, softly, without microphones, without lights, just voices. It felt like the simplest, purest performance ever. There were no fans watching, no cameras rolling, no pressure, just music and love. When the song ended, Jungkook looked at me and said, "Hyung, I'll never forget this day." I replied, "Neither will I, Jungkook. It's not every day you get to see your little brother find his forever." And deep inside, I knew this night would stay with me forever. It wasn't about saying goodbye to an era. It was about celebrating growth, love, and the beauty of time. Army, if you're listening now, remember this. Life changes, people grow, but love, real love, never fades. Whether it's between friends, family, or the bond we share, it stays alive even when everything else moves on. I'll tell you more in the next part about a private moment Jungkook and I shared later that night, when the music quieted and the truth came pouring out. Stay here with me, Army. This story still has more heart left to tell. When the music started to fade and the night reached its calmest point, the energy of the celebration slowly turned into something more intimate. Guests were still laughing and chatting, but the excitement had softened into warmth. I found myself looking for Jungkook again, not as the world's golden maknae, not as a superstar surrounded by cameras, but as the boy I had once shared long nights of laughter and struggle with. He was standing near the back garden, away from the lights, holding a small glass of champagne, watching the sky. For a few seconds, I didn't say anything. I just stood there, watching him in silence. There was something beautiful about that moment, the way the lights from inside reflected softly on his face, the way his shoulders seemed relaxed, free. He didn't notice me at first. When he finally turned around, he smiled that familiar smile. "Hyung," he said, "you found me." I laughed. "Of course I did. You think you can hide from me even on your wedding day?" He laughed too, and for a while we just stood there together, not needing words. The wind was gentle, carrying the faint sound of music from inside. There was a sense of peace in the air, something that felt like closure, but also a new beginning. Then Jungkook said something that made me pause. "You know, Hyung, I used to imagine this day when I was younger, but I never imagined you'd actually be here, standing next to me." I looked at him, a little confused. Why wouldn't I be here? He shrugged, looking down. "Because you're always busy, always working hard. You've been like a second father to me sometimes, you know? Always taking care of everyone. I just didn't want to burden you." I shook my head and smiled gently. "Jungkook, listen. You could never be a burden to me. You've been like my little brother since day one. And I wouldn't miss this day for anything. Not even for the biggest concert in the world." He looked up at me again, eyes glimmering slightly. "Hyung, thank you." I could tell he wanted to say more, so I waited. There was a moment of silence before he continued. "I was nervous, you know? Not about getting married, but about growing up. I didn't want to lose who I was. I didn't want to lose you guys. I didn't want the team to drift apart." I placed a hand on his shoulder. "Jungkook, we'll always be connected. Maybe we don't see each other every day anymore. Maybe life takes us in different directions, but what we build together, that's forever. You don't lose family just because time passes. You carry it with you." He nodded slowly, his eyes soft but thoughtful. I could see that he understood. That conversation reminded me how much he's matured. He's still that same boy who seeks reassurance, but now he's also someone who gives it back. After that, we didn't talk much. We just stood side by side, watching the stars. There was one star that seemed especially bright, and I pointed to it. "That one's for you," I said jokingly. "It's shining because tonight is your night." He chuckled, then said something that caught me off guard. "No, Hyung. That one's for all of us. Because even though life changes, we're still shining together." I smiled quietly. It was such a Jungkook thing to say, simple, pure, but filled with meaning. We stayed there for a few more minutes. talking about little things. Funny memories from our early days, our favorite tour moments, even that one time we got lost in a foreign city because no one could read the map. We laughed until tears formed in our eyes. And in between those laughs, there were moments of silence that didn't feel empty, they felt sacred. Then, out of nowhere, he said, "Hyung, do you think Army would have cried today?" I looked at him and said, "Cried?" They'd cry, laugh, and then start making edits about it within minutes. You know them. He laughed again, his head tilted back, just like he used to when we'd tease him during interviews. "Yeah," he said. "They're probably watching every detail right now." I nodded. "And they're proud of you, just like I am." He turned serious again for a moment. "You know, Hyung, when you went to the military, I really missed you. I didn't say it out loud, but I did. You were like my anchor. Seeing you here tonight, it feels like everything's come full circle." That hit me deeply. I didn't know what to say for a second, so I just looked at him, then gave him a hug. Not the kind of hug you give for cameras, but a real one. The kind that says, "Thank you, I'm proud of you, I'll always be here." We stayed like that for a while. The world around us seemed to fade away. Just two brothers standing under the stars, holding on to a bond that fame could never touch. When we finally pulled away, I said, "Jungkook, don't forget to live. Not just work, not just perform live. Feel everything." Because one day, when you look back, you realize that life isn't measured by success or awards. It's measured by moments like this. He smiled softly. "I remember that, Hyung." Then, as if the universe wanted to mark the moment, a small firework went off in the distance, someone celebrating, maybe from another part of the city. The light reflected in Jungkook's eyes, and I thought, yes, this is exactly what life is supposed to look like. Army. I know many of you have followed us for years, through every laughter and tear. Watching Jungkook reach this point made me realize something important. Your love has guided us here. Every message, every cheer, every time you said we're proud of you, those words built the foundation we all stand on today. That night, as the stars watched silently, I made a quiet promise to keep sharing these stories with you, to remind you that even behind the glitter and music, there's a heart that beats the same as yours. In the next part, I'll tell you what happened after the final song played, the moment that brought everyone, including me, to tears. It's something I'll never forget. Stay with me, Army. This story still has more to say. When the final song began to play, something in the air shifted completely. The night had been full of laughter, dancing, and soft joy, but now, as the melody filled the space, it became something else, something deeper. The music wasn't loud or grand. It was gentle, the kind of song that wraps around your heart and doesn't let go. It was a song that spoke of memories, of journeys, of love that doesn't fade with time. Jungkook had chosen the song himself. I recognized it immediately, the same melody we used to hum during long nights in the studio when we were just 7 boys chasing dreams that felt too far away. Hearing it now, on his wedding night, felt like a bridge between our past and his future. As the first notes echoed, everyone grew silent, even the laughter faded. I looked at Jungkook, and he was standing there holding his bride's hand, eyes glistening with emotion. He was singing softly along with the music. His voice trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of the moment. It was as if he was singing goodbye to a version of himself, while welcoming another. I felt a lump in my throat. All the years we'd spent together training, performing, crying, laughing, they flashed before my eyes like scenes from a movie. I remember the first time Jungkook walked into the practice room, nervous and quiet. I remembered when he stayed up late writing songs, trying to find his voice. I remembered his first concert tears, his first big smile when Army shouted his name. And now, he was here, singing as a man, surrounded by love. I couldn't help it, tears filled my eyes. I turned slightly to hide them, but Hobie noticed and gave me a small smile. "It's okay, Hyung," he whispered. "Cry, we all are." When I looked around, I saw it wasn't just me. Namjoon was wiping his eyes quietly. Yoongi was pretending to look at the lights, though I could see the redness in his eyes. Taehyung and Jimin were standing side by side, holding back tears but smiling at the same time. It wasn't sadness, it was gratitude. We were all overwhelmed by how beautiful the moment was. When the song reached its final chorus, Jungkook suddenly turned toward us. He lifted his glass and said in a trembling voice, "To my brothers, thank you for being my home. To Army, thank you for being our forever. And to my wife, thank you for choosing me." The room erupted in applause, but it wasn't loud. It was soft, emotional, heartfelt. I could feel every clap carrying love. Then, unexpectedly, Jungkook motioned for the microphone. He said, "I want to sing one last song tonight, a song that reminds me of where I came from." And when the first line came out, my heart stopped for a second. It was "Still with you." That song, his voice, the meaning behind it, it hit everyone at once. The lyrics about longing, about staying connected despite distance, felt like a message not just to his bride, but to us and to Army. It was his way of saying, "I'll never forget where I belong." As he sang, I noticed people crying quietly. Even the staff in the back were emotional. I could barely breathe for a moment because it was too beautiful, too real. The lights shimmered softly, reflecting in his eyes, and I realized that this was Jungkook's final bow before a new curtain opened in his life. When the song ended, there was silence. No one wanted to break the moment. Then Jungkook whispered into the microphone, "Thank you everyone, I love you all." That's when I couldn't hold it in anymore. I walked up to him, hugged him tightly, and said, "I'm so proud of you." I didn't care that everyone was watching. I didn't care about the cameras. All I wanted was for him to know that in that instant, I wasn't Jin from BTS, I was just his Hyung, standing beside him, sharing the most important day of his life. He hugged me back, and for a second, it felt like all the noise of the world disappeared. He was just us again, seven souls, who once shared a dream. When we pulled away, Jungkook said quietly, "Hyung, do you remember what you told me years ago? You said, one day, you'll make the world cry with your voice. I think that day came tonight." I smiled through my tears. "You did, Jungkook. You really did." After that, the music started again, but softer now. Something to ease the heaviness that had filled everyone's hearts. I went back to my seat and just sat there, watching the people dance slowly, the lights glowing like fireflies around them. I thought about how lucky I was to witness all of this, to see him grow, to see him love, to see him find peace. Army, I wish you could have been there. The love in that room was indescribable. It wasn't just about Jungkook's wedding, it was about everything we've shared as a family. Every concert, every tear, every laugh, it all led to this night. And I realized something important. Life keeps moving, but the memories stay. Every moment we share with those we love becomes eternal. You don't need to hold on too tightly to the past. It's already a part of you. As the night came to an end, Jungkook came over again. He looked exhausted but happy. He said, "Hyung, I don't know what's next, but I hope we can keep making good memories." I smiled and said, "We will, because that's what family does." He nodded, eyes glistening. "Then promise me something," he said. "Promise me you'll keep being happy." I laughed softly. "I promise, Jungkook. As long as you are..." We both smiled, and for a moment, the world felt perfectly balanced. Army, I'll never forget that final song, because it reminded me of something we all forget. Sometimes love doesn't end when moments pass. It continues to echo in our hearts, just like a melody that never fades. In the next part, I'll tell you what happened after the lights went out, the quiet goodbye, the last hug before everyone left, and the words Jungkook whispered that I still carry with me to this day. Stay close, Army. The most emotional part is still to come. When the music stopped and the lights began to dim, I knew the night was drawing to a close. The laughter had softened into quiet conversations, and people were slowly preparing to leave. The air was thick with emotion, warm but heavy, like everyone knew they had just witnessed something unforgettable. I stayed seated for a moment, just watching Jungkook move through the room. He was greeting guests, bowing politely, smiling sincerely to each one. He looked radiant, calm, mature, full of life. His bride stood beside him, her hand in his, and they looked like a picture of everything love is supposed to be, pure, steady, and peaceful. But even with all that joy, I felt a strange pull in my chest. It was the same feeling I had every time one of us reached a new milestone, the kind of happiness that comes with a touch of nostalgia. It reminded me that every new beginning also means saying goodbye to a chapter that once meant everything. I stood up slowly, took one last sip of my drink, and walked toward him. The music in the background was soft, almost whispering, and the lights above us glowed like starlight. When Jungkook saw me, his eyes lit up immediately. "Hyung," he said, his voice full of warmth. "You're still here?" "Of course," I said, smiling. I couldn't leave without saying a proper goodbye. He laughed quietly. "You always say that, and then we end up talking for hours." "Maybe that's the point," I replied. "Some goodbyes aren't meant to end quickly." We walked together toward the garden, where the air was cool and the night sky stretched endlessly above us. The moon was full that night, casting a silver glow over everything. It was quiet, just the sound of crickets and the faint music from inside the hall. Jungkook exhaled slowly, his breath visible in the crisp night air. "Hyung," he said softly, "I didn't realize how emotional today would be. I thought I could handle it easily, but..." He paused, looking down. "It feels like I'm closing one door and opening another, and it's scary. Exciting, but scary." I nodded. "That's how life works. Every time you grow, you leave a little part of your old self behind. But don't be afraid of that, Jungkook. It means you're alive. You're evolving." He looked up, eyes shimmering. "Did you feel that too, when you started your own chapters?" I smiled faintly. "Every time. When we first debuted, when we went on world tours, when we took our breaks, even when I left for the military. Each time, I felt like I was saying goodbye to a version of me I'd never meet again. But each time, I found something new, something worth holding on to." He was quiet for a while, just listening. Then he said, "Hyung, you've always known how to say the right things." I chuckled. "That's because I've made enough mistakes to know what's worth saying." We both laughed, but then his tone turned more serious. "Hyung, thank you for everything. I don't think I ever said it enough. You were always there, guiding me, even when I didn't ask for it. You made me believe I could be more than just a kid with a dream." Those words hit me right in the heart. I didn't know how to respond at first, so I just looked at him, this man who used to look up at me for advice, now standing tall, grounded, full of wisdom of his own. "Jungkook," I said softly, "you don't need to thank me. Just promise me one thing, keep being yourself. Don't lose that heart of yours. It's what makes you special." He nodded, eyes glistening. "I promise, Hyung." And then he stepped forward and hugged me. It wasn't a quick hug. It was long, tight, full of unspoken memories. I could feel his heartbeat against mine, steady and strong. It was the same heartbeat I'd heard backstage before our first show, the same rhythm that had carried through every song we ever sang together. When we finally pulled away, he smiled. "I hope one day, when I look back at this moment, I'll remember how it felt standing here with you under the moonlight." "You will," I said, "because moments like this, they don't fade. They live inside you." The wind blew softly then, rustling the leaves, carrying the faint laughter from inside. It was as if the world itself was saying goodbye too. I put my hands in my pockets and looked up at the sky. "You know, Jungkook, the moon looks a lot like Army tonight, always watching, always shining, even from far away." He smiled at that. "Yeah, they've been part of everything, haven't they?" "They are everything," I said simply. For a moment, we just stood there again in silence, both of us lost in thought. Then Jungkook said, "Hyung, do you think they'll understand how much we love them?" I turned to him. "They already do. They feel it every time we sing, every time we smile, every time we come back. Army doesn't just listen, they feel." He nodded slowly, eyes distant but peaceful. "I hope so. I want them to know I wouldn't be here without them." "They know, Jungkook," I said, "and they're proud of you, so am I." He smiled again, this time softer. Then I'm happy. The lights inside flickered slightly, signaling the end of the celebration. Guests began to say their final goodbyes, laughter fading into the cool night. Jungkook turned toward me once more. "Hyung," he said quietly, "this isn't the end, right?" I shook my head. "No, it's just the next verse of our song." He laughed. "That sounds like something you'd write in a lyric." "Maybe I will," I said, smiling. "One day." We walked back toward the hall, side by side. The last thing I saw before the doors closed behind us was the moonlight resting gently on the path ahead, soft, silver, and eternal. Army, I want you to remember this too. Love doesn't disappear just because life changes. Real love evolves. It follows you through every stage, through every new chapter, lighting your path just like that moon. And as I left the wedding that night, I carried one feeling with me, peace. Because I knew Jungkook wasn't just starting a new life. He was continuing the legacy of love we all built together. In the next part, I'll share what happened after I returned home that night, the thoughts that kept me awake, the memories that replayed in my mind, and the quiet realization that made me smile through the tears. Stay close, Army. The story's heartbeat is still echoing. When the night began to settle, and the soft glow of the chandeliers dimmed, I felt something inside me slow down too. The laughter, the clinking of glasses, and the echo of music still filled the room. But there was also a gentle calm, the kind that only comes after something truly beautiful happens. I stood quietly for a moment, watching Jungkook and his bride dance under the golden light. It was surreal. It felt like time had folded itself, showing me the boy I once trained with, the young man who stood beside me on countless stages, and now the husband stepping into a new chapter of his life. I thought about the first time I met Jungkook. He was shy, a little nervous, but with eyes full of wonder. I still remember teasing him not to be mean, but because he was like our little brother, the youngest, who carried the biggest dreams. And now, seeing him hold his partner with so much love and care, I realized that he had grown into someone who understood the meaning of love beyond the stage, beyond fame, beyond the lights that once defined us. As I looked around, I saw familiar faces, people who had been part of our story for years. Namjoon, standing with his thoughtful smile, always watching over everyone. Jimin, emotional as always, his eyes glistening as he whispered something that made Jungkook laugh. Taehyung, quietly capturing the moment with his camera, his way of freezing emotions forever. And Hoseok, our sunshine, still